Celtics trade rumors are coming up next. Before we dive into the latest, though, the NBA trade deadline is almost here. So if you want to stay in the know with what's going on around the Boston Celtics during the trade deadline, if they make any moves and maybe the buyout market as well, hit that big red button and subscribe today. Tom Downey here for Celtics Today by Chat Sports. Let's talk trade rumors around Boston. Aaron Gordon is the big new one out there potentially for the Celtics. The report from The Athletic is that the Celtics are among the teams interested in trading for Gordon, who has apparently requested a trade from the Orlando Magic. Now, Gordon in general, I think, is a very strong fit for what the Boston Celtics appear to be searching for. Namely, someone who can kind of replace Gordon Hayward as that 3-4 swingman forward, and Gordon can be that player. As a reminder, by the way, yes, feels like he's been in the NBA for years, right? He's not 26 years old yet. He doesn't turn 26 until September. He is still a very young, and with the way he's played of late, promising player. Now, the Celtics, of course, are not the only team in the mix here to add Aaron Gordon. The 5 teams mentioned by the Athletics: the Houston Rockets, interestingly enough, which I find kind of a weird fit, the Minnesota Timberwolves, the Denver Nuggets, the Portland Trail Blazers, and the Boston Celtics. Those latter 3 seem to make the most sense to me in terms of teams that are actually kind of sort of contending. And as for Boston, going after a player like Aaron Gordon, thanks to that trade exception, makes a lot of sense. Now, where things get difficult is figuring out the trade value. The Magic allegedly are searching for either multiple first-round picks or a first-round pick and a young player. Now, Boston has young players. It's a matter of, are those young players good enough to intrigue Orlando? So I'll throw out 5 names here that I think could potentially fit as an Aaron Gordon trade chip. Peyton Pritchard, the guard, who I was a big fan of coming out of Oregon, but isn't maybe the highest upside player. Romeo Langford was a top 15-ish pick and hasn't actually played all that much. Aaron Nesmith was mentioned by The Athletic. I'd trade for him in a heartbeat for Aaron Gordon. Marcus Smart, who I don't think that's the right type of player you want to give up for a player of Gordon's caliber. And I'll also mention Robert Williams, the big man who's kind of caught in a logjam. Now, in previous years, Boston would have been able to make this work because they had all those first-round picks. Well, not so much anymore. The next 2 years, in all reality, they probably just have their first-round pick and their second-round pick. Now, technically, Boston could acquire a future second from a team like the Thunder or the Charlotte Hornets, but those second-round picks are protected and are highly, highly, highly unlikely to ever convey. So I put together this trade idea for Aaron Gordon. I'm very curious what you guys think about it. Celtics, of course, end up getting Gordon from the Orlando Magic. The Magic get Boston's first-round pick and Romeo Langford. Of the young pieces for Boston, I think Langford has the most upside. Maybe the Magic agree, maybe they don't, but if I'm Boston, I'm down to move on from him if it nets me Aaron Gordon, maybe even throw in a second-round pick to help make this deal work. Gordon has been a inconsistent young player, and I want to emphasize that young part there. Again, he's still not even 25 years old. But he's put up 14 points per game, almost 15 points per game, excuse me. He's a pretty good distributor as well at over 4 assists, and his three-point shooting has really stepped up in recent weeks, and that's a big deal for Boston. If you're adding a guy who can play the 3 or the 4, they have to be able to stretch the court. Aaron Gordon can do that. And if you bring in Aaron Gordon, you could maybe move Marcus Smart back to that full-time sixth-man role. Go with Kemba Walker, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, Aaron Gordon, insert center here. That's very intriguing. That's actually a really good, even if you want to go mega small ball 5 and put Aaron Gordon down there at the 5. That works for Boston. He fits from a money perspective. I'll also make note there was a mention that maybe Boston could include Tristan Thompson in a trade. Seems like Magic don't want that because they want their own trade exception from that. So what do you want to do as it relates to the Boston Celtics and Aaron Gordon? Should the Celtics trade for him? Get your votes in for me in the comments section. Y for yes, or type in N for no. Let me know what you guys think down there in the comments. Now, today's show made possible by our sportsbook partner, BETUS. And if your bracket is busted, like mine is, which, let's be honest here, it was a rough year overall. You can make up some of the losses with BetUS. When you head over to chatsports.com/bet and use the promo code you see on screen, chat125, that will get you a 125% deposit bonus. So you put down $100, they're going to give you an extra $125 for free. Some extra house money to bet with and try and make up some losses from what I think for most people has not been a great bracket run thus far. It's chatsports.com/bet. Don't forget that promo code chat125. Let's get into a potential mega trade involving the Boston Celtics and the Atlanta Hawks. The Athletic reporting that the two sides have had discussion on some trades, a couple different variations that we'll go through here. As a general reminder, the NBA trade deadline rapidly approaching, coming up on March 25th. And the Celtics have one of the best assets from their own perspective to make something happen with that $28.5 million trade exception. Now for Atlanta, the big name is John Collins, the big man who has been linked to the Celtics what feels like for months now at this point. The Hawks had offered Collins an extension, the biggest one that they could, and he turned them down, and that's led to a lot of trade discussion and speculation that Collins is not going to be back with the Hawks next year. Now, the Hawks' asking price is not cheap, nor should it be for a player of Collins' caliber. 18 points per game, 8 rebounds. His numbers have dipped from the previous year. His usage, though, has also gone down. He's still shooting around 38% from deep. That ability is very valuable in today's NBA. Now, another player from the Atlanta side that's been linked in some potential trade talks is Bogdan Bogdanovic, one of the best names in the NBA. And this one could be as part of a Marcus Smart, John Collins mega trade, which we'll get to the Marcus Smart side here in just a second. Now, Boston's been linked to Bogdanovic in the past. They almost landed him last year at the NBA trade deadline. Of course, that fell through. The Hawks, quick side note, by the way, also asked about Jaylen Brown, and those talks went nowhere. Now, this year for the Hawks, Bogdanovic's numbers, they've taken a dip. He has not been the player that they paid for, and if Atlanta's looking to sell, maybe they move on from Bogdanovic and try and move that contract before it's too late there. So for the Celtics, there is some intrigue here of maybe they could find a way to get both John Collins and Bogdan Bogdanovic, two players that would fit what they want to do on offense pretty darn well. The problem with that is there's no way to acquire both, and probably not even just John Collins, without giving up Marcus Smart, something I know you Celtics fans don't like, and I understand, but allow me to talk through it. From a just asset valuation perspective, Smart's the one that kind of has to go to the Hawks in any potential trade. He's a really good basketball player, but Boston is also facing some money crunch down the road for what I think the ownership wants to do. You're going to be paying big money to Jason Tatum, to Jaylen Brown, to even Kemba Walker in the near future. Smart's going to get paid too. Do they really want to go super far into the luxury tax? If they're going to bring in someone like a John Collins and also pay him, you actually probably want to move on from Marcus Smart from a money perspective. So I put together this trade, and you guys might not like it. I think I gave up quite a bit from the Celtics perspective. They get John Collins and Bogdan Bogdanovic. The Hawks get Marcus Smart, Robert Williams, and a 2021 first-round pick. Those are three really good assets that Boston moves on from in exchange for Collins and Bogdanovic. So as it relates directly to Marcus Smart, would you trade him? Get your votes in for me. 1 for yes, you would. 0 for no, you would never do that. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. I know it's a lot, and I understand that. But to get John Collins, someone I'm super high on, I think would be a great, you could start him at the 4, small ball 5 in crunch time. Perfect fit for Boston. Bogdanovic gives them another wing option in a team that kind of is a bit thin in terms of reliable wings behind the Brown-Tatum duo. Yes, it costs you Marcus Smart. Yes, it costs you Robert Williams. But if you're bringing on Collins and paying him what he's going to cost, you're probably not actually going to pay Marcus Smart, Robert Williams down the road. So I think it actually does make some sense for both sides. Of course, we'll see what the Celtics end up doing this year at the NBA trade deadline just days away.